Hello and welcome to day 3 of the Rise of the Rebel Matriarch Leadership Summit. And today we are waking the witches, we are healing the witch wound, we are talking all things activating our voice, standing in our truth, owning our power, and healing that long lineage of shame and silence and separation that has had women having to be shunned and shut up and suppressed for too long. And we are here to rise with our truth and with our voices and with our power. And today I have some beautiful co-authors from the Rebel Ma Healing in the Time of the Feminine and Rising in the Time of the Feminine books, and we're going to be jamming on all things healing the witch wound. So I'm really happy to introduce today Hannah Mama-Skye, who is coming in from the mountains of Spain. And Hannah Mama-Skye is a facilitator of the deep feminine and brings to her work the depth of her journey as a woman. She is a witch, a healer, a space holder, a retreat leader, and a channel. A powerful poet receiving and reciting rhymes to guide us through these times, a voice of a generation standing up for what is right, imagining a world where every woman and girl is free to thrive. Hannah Mama-Skye founded the Waking the World movement and the Waking the Witches retreats, which are life-changing retreats and ceremonies that wake up forgotten and lost parts of ourselves, reclaiming our sovereignty and realigning with our soul's true purpose. She is also the co-founder of Poetry for the People, a poetic revolution and movement encouraging and inspiring poets to stand in their light and shine. So I think she is very welcome here to join us in talking all things freeing our voices and standing in our truth to shine our light bright for all of the other weirdos to find us. Welcome, Hannah.
Hi.
Beautiful girl. And I'm just going to introduce everybody before we kick off, So we've also got the gorgeous Michelle Gardiner here, who is chiming in from the UK, but she is Australian. And Michelle Gardiner is the founder and director of the Aspire series, a global platform created to help women lead change and impact. 55 Faces forms a key part of this as it weaves threads between women across the world who are stepping up in leadership and using their stories of influence for change. Michelle is based between Bali, Indonesia, and Southeast Australia. And now she is in the UK, the Isles of the UK, which is incredible. But she's spreading her seeds of activating our voices. And she's actually in the middle of a thesis right now, aren't you? All around this subject.
Thesis and 2 books coming very soon as well. All at the same time.
Amazing, beautiful. And Inkhamwong. Ice is a wild mother of 3 who is vibrantly passionate about living life to its fullest through ceremony, presence, alchemy, and play. Founder of Australian Ceremonial Cacao, she shares cacao infused with the wise energy of Australia with the world, with the intention of sewing humanity together through love. I just absolutely love that. So welcome, my little tribe of soul sisters all around the world. We are literally coming in from every corner of the globe, to hold hands and to be a stand for the feminine rising and for the healing of ourselves, for the lifetimes and lineages of shame and suffering and separation, and really standing here in our power so that we can soil some more solid foundations for our children and our children's children to come. We do this healing work because we want to break the cycles of the past and become cycle breakers and chain makers. So that's what we are all doing here, and I'm very excited to share our wisdom with the world today. So I just thought, there's been a lot of talk about healing the witch wound lately, about it's becoming more into people's awareness. People are remembering and waking up to the fact that our ancestry and that our lineage and our trauma, intergenerational trauma, has a lot to do with why we feel fear, how we show up in the world, what we might do or might not do, what we feel safe to do, and it's real and it's true. The witch wound is real. The sister wound is real. And what I really, feel is very important is, it's as simple as coming together in places like this to actually share our voices, to actually speak our truth, to actually hold space for one another and lean into to each other and allow ourselves to receive each other's support and love and trust in each other, to hold each other, that's what heals the witch wound. And it doesn't have to be profound, crazy healing. It's just every time we lean into an uncomfortable situation, every time we meet a new edge, every time we use our voice for good, every time we share a gift that we might feel scared to share, is healing that, witch wound. So yeah, I'm really, really excited for today and for the world to wake up to that and to continuously, lean into whatever healing is necessary in order to be able to shine their light bright for all to see and share their medicine and service to the collective. So I'd love to hand it over to Hannah, because I was just chatting before we started here, and Hannah wrote an incredible transmission during our Rebel Ma Healing in the Time of the Feminine Journey. And she wants to share that story because it's a really powerful transmission for this exact time that we're living in.
Thank you, Saoirse. Yes, this is very close to my heart. Look at our copy. I'm going to read it from the Rebel Ma book, which is very exciting. And I have to say, this week, the Rebel, I put it on the bookshelf, and that is such a dream come true when you can look at your bookshelf and see that something we, as a collective of witches, have created. So really powerful. I'm going to share this transmission that came through, actually ignited by something Saoirse said to me. And it was the minute she said it, I opened and received this. And I always knew it was going to be the beginning of the chapter. Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
We are.
I write in honor of the goddess. In birth there is death, and in death there is birth. These two powerful portals are so intrinsically connected. They are our most important and sovereign rites of passage in our journey on earth. From the womb to the tomb. Today, society fails so miserably at both and continues to rob souls of their peaceful transitions in and out of here. How we birth, welcome death, and live and die without fear will bring a new consciousness and paradigm, birthing our new earth. We are the midwives and stewards of its timely rebirth. A new earth with feminine leaders, no more toxic masculine deceivers, women held in reverence as open receivers, seated in their oracle and respected as visionaries and wisdom keepers. And it starts with women, in us acknowledging and harnessing the power of our wombs, reclaiming our blood and birthrights, women that are not afraid to speak up, that are okay with being too much, trusting in our body's innate wisdom to birth all that's created through us. Women representing a world where they are free to thrive and be worshipped as their birthright. A world where every being is sovereign and free. A world where violence against another could never be. No genocide born from greed, privilege, or supremacy. Realizing it begins within you and me, your relationship to nature and her as mother, and in recognizing every other soul as your sister and brother. Look at the state of our world through women not believing that they were enough. Trodden down into the mud. Through generation and generation, we were taught in ourselves, our intuition, our bodies not to trust. We were planted into a system from so young, raised by parents who were shown that abuse equals love. When we suppressed the feminine, the whole world went blind. Our connection to nature, the seasons and cycles, suddenly so misaligned, severing us from the umbilical cord to the divine. Our Mother Earth was shattered as she watched her daughters being burnt and buried for their gifts and magic, for being taught their sacred bleed was tragic. They shamed the holy whore in us all, our sexuality, our spirituality at its core. She wept oceans of tears as she watched for hundreds of years her children being indoctrinated into a system of segregation and disconnection, an abomination to her creation of a world with no separation and trust. Watching patriarchal hyperinflation, war, famine, and colonization, she howled in agony at the enemy of her, the venom so potent she didn't know how to die and rebirth. So our mother sat and prayed to the sun gods, the moon, and the stars. She asked for the peaceful warriors to come from afar. She called to the starseeds and asked for their hearts and presence, and she sang to the rivers, the source of all our essence, drowning patriarchy and hierarchy and all the damage that it has done. And she waited patiently for her prayers to be answered, and the star people did come. She knew it wasn't to be an instant fix. It would take time for these souls to remember being born from pretext to matrix. Yet they all had a knowing inside them from when they were young, a seed that was planted from when time had begun, a remembering of a place where the angels sung and a place so held that telepathy was touch. I knew I was being called to remember and walk the path to the day I would birth my sacred son and be called to stand in my truth and show my ultimate trust. There is my holy transmission. For healing the witch wound.
It's
That lives in all of us, both women and men. You know, I think it obviously it happened to us, but it also happened to men. Like, and it wasn't just witches, you know, they burnt women. Women, if they had a black cat, if they had red hair, if they sang to the moon, if they collected crystals and used herbs for healing, if they helped babies be born into the world, like just from simply being a powerful woman, they were branded as witches and they were burnt. And some men fell into that category too, men that, you know, wizardry and shamanism, like men who practiced some of the magic, but it wasn't predominantly, it wasn't just about like magic and spirituality, it was women. This was a destruction and a deletion of the feminine. They were so terrified of like our power and this unquestionable, unquantifiable force of the feminine, that this happened, and the huge sister wound it caused, because you know, women were, now we're in a place in the world and in our consciousness where, like here, women, we're calling each other in, you know, we're calling each other in and we're collaborating and we feel safe. But then women were calling each other out, and that's where this massive mistrust happened. And for the men also had to watch their wives and daughters and loved ones be burnt. So there's a huge grief, collective grief in this wound, in this witch wound, and it runs so deep. It runs so deep, and we see it still now so prevalent within our society. Which is what, like, one of my biggest missions is waking the witches. Because for me, like I share in retreat and ceremony, a witch is, I write the word witch, and I don't know what it's called when you write off the letters. There's a name for that. But witch for me, broken down, is a woman in tune called home. You know, she is in tune. She is in tune with her intuition, the seasons, the cycles, the nature, the animals, the elements. And, you know, a lot of women through this witch wound would shut down their gifts. And they've been shut down for so many generations that now, like, women are afraid. They're scared that they have these gifts or these, you know, my mum, for example, I feel is a prime example. She's such a psychic, premonition, deaf doula, like, but she, you know, it's something she's closed down and not tuned into in her life. And there's so many examples of this where people have shut down and quietened their gifts. And the witch wound is prevalent in anyone that's afraid to feel seen, heard, be too loud, you know, sing too loud, dance too much, just anyone that's afraid to show their gifts. For me, that is like, that the witch wound is still within them, running deep within our collective consciousness. And yeah, it's becoming louder and louder and louder, and more focus is being put on healing this huge wound. And for me, like, waking the witches is everything, because it's waking women up to be powerful women in their power, in tune, trusting their intuition above all else. And I love, my favorite bit on the end of my retreat in the closing ceremony, I have them all around screaming, I am a witch, I am a witch, I am a witch. And it's like, you can just hear the generations, the ancestors, the witches and women and everything before us, like our voices change, like something's coming through us, reclaiming that we are in fact witches. And it's been really interesting this time in sharing my retreats, how much I've got a lot of I've actually received a lot of abuse from the more of the Christian community, from the church. Like I've actually received like some not so many nice things aimed at me, and I'm really like, wow, like I don't know if I can say it on here, but I'm like, do you want me to go there? Do you want me to say that, you know, Jesus fucked a witch? Like he was in sacred union with with the holy whore priestess Mary Magdalene, and like she was the witches of all the witches, and they were in sacred divine union together. And I really found it interesting just how much, I don't know, like outside abuse I seem to receive this time through this sharing the witches, and how triggering this word and this wound still is for people.
Really interesting. And where did you receive this? Like, who are these people? Just randomly online, or people that you actually?
No, randomly online.
Okay. Well, I mean, a witch, all it means is a wise woman, a seer, a woman who knows, you know, and of course they're going to be triggered by that because they don't want us to know. They don't want us to remember. They don't want us to be in our power and in our truth and connect to our intuition and sharing our gifts, because that is how we dismantle this system and how we, you know, disrupt it. So it makes sense that they are still afraid of it, but you keep doing what you're doing. And tell me a little bit more about, you know, the women who might be watching this, in terms of what little rituals can they do to heal this witch wound. Obviously I said, you know, coming together, that is one of the biggest things, but have you got any, you know, practices or rituals you would do to feel safer in speaking your truth and connecting to your gifts?
For me, obviously the witch wound runs deep within our wombs. Like for me, our womb is that inner cauldron, that creative, magical cauldron where we can give life or birth new ideas. And I think there's a lot of it that we carry in our womb space. So things like yoni steaming, and really clearing out the old stories that we're holding in our womb is a really important ceremony of the whole retreat, which happens quite soon when we gather. And just the power of a yoni steaming ceremony, actually, and then like being together. And it is something you can totally do at home safely. If you have the herbs and the right setup, I really would recommend a steam. And then reconnecting with the womb space through, I work a lot with the crystal egg, with the rose. I think the rose is really healing to reconnecting the womb space to the heart space. For me, really, it begins with like releasing and connecting back with our wombs, because for me, that's like our cauldron. And then as sisters, all by ourselves, like just rituals and practices around the new and full moon, I find, like, what can we let go of? Like I have a little cauldron, and sisters come round, and it's so funny, like the cauldron's used for so many things in this house. Someone loses something, it goes in the cauldron. But someone comes over and they want to let go of something, someone, a feeling or a way they are, like we're like, put it in the cauldron. And then so this the fire ritual and the letting go, and having an altar, not just an altar that collects dust of like your pretty things, but like a place where you go to actually connect with the divine, and have a sacred place where, even if you're going to spend some time and light a candle and just tuning in to yourself and your womb. But yeah, there's many rituals and practices, but I think to begin with, working in the reconnection and healing of our womb as our cauldron, is the most powerful, I would say.
Beautiful. I love that. Yes, indeed. So gorgeous. Thank you for that. And tell me, you are here, you know, you are another wise old witch and star seed, and I'd love to hear from you, you know, what it brings up in you, this whole healing the witch wound, what it is that, you know, you see and how we heal it and what it does to us.
So for me, just getting to know myself as a woman, I think that's part of like the witch wound is just, I think, just severing women from knowing themselves as women, like not being taught about bleeds, not being taught or seeing birth anymore, not attending these things anymore. And it's disconnecting us from being women. So oh, there's my daughter crying. Just part of cacao as well for me was me getting to know myself, because I know for me personally growing up, I hated having a womb. I hated being female, and having lived in a Muslim country for 10 years as well, like even more exacerbating the hatred for being a female because of just all the rights that we didn't have, couldn't go out on my own, those kinds of things, always needing to look out for danger just for being female, basically being like a living invitation for rape just for being female. And so I made myself masculine on the outside to not draw attention for so many years. So I lived in a Muslim country between 8 to 18. And, you know, my mother wasn't around when I got my first bleed. And my father, the first thing he said to me when he found my first pad in the bathroom bin was, he called me and I was in the kitchen like chopping up cucumber or something. He's like, go and fix that. That is disgusting. And he was like standing over me and pointing at the bathroom. And I'm thinking, but it's in the bin. Is that not where I put it? Like, I had no one to teach me except for this man coming to stand over me. And he, of course, it was no fault of his own for being so incredibly disconnected as well from what a woman is, and just having no idea how to communicate or emotionally relate either. And my mother was living overseas at the time, so I didn't have her. And I was kind of just going through this ongoing tumultuous relationship of self-hatred and having extremely painful period pain because of that. And then, you know, fast forward to birthing my son at 26 and having been on the pill between probably 13 to after my son was born. Like I can't remember, I think he was 2 or no, he was 4, and I decided to take the Mirena out. So post-birth, I hopped onto a Mirena. And so I was always kind of disconnected. And I just remember going to the obstetrician and deciding that is it. And it just came up, like it just came about. My body just decided we're taking this out. And I got it taken out. And I remember driving in the car home and I just burst out crying. And I, for the first time, felt this acceptance for, okay, I'm going to go through whatever it is. Now we're on this new journey now to know me and myself. And just going to hypnotherapy and all these things after that. And it was just learning to get to know myself. Like I couldn't stand myself. I knew women who took themselves out on lunch dates for themselves. And I was like, oh my God, I could not do that. I remembered this. What, you just sit there on your own and eat lunch? How terrifying. What would people think of me? And then just ceremony. So ceremony and ritual came into my life, particularly with cacao, and cacao being a love plant medicine and also a really gentle plant medicine and a beautiful woman plant medicine, and learning to sit with myself, learning to be okay with myself, learning to feel what my body felt, learning about the cycle, which I was never taught, learning about how I feel in certain times of the month, learning how I feel around the moon. Just like it was I was drip feeding these tiny little things, because obviously there's a lot of years I missed out on, which should happen throughout puberty and growing up, and guidance for the women around us, from the women around us, and just lacking that and learning it on my own. And it's just been amazing. And now I have girls who see me, you know, empty my yoni cup and keep it in a jar. And they know it's under the sink, and they're like, that's Mum's blood. She saves it for later. She puts it in the earth. And, you know, and I'm like, yeah, well, and she goes, can I do it? Can I do certain things? And for me, I've let her join me and sit with me, but not do it because I want her to also be excited, and she is excited to wait for her first moon blood to arrive, for her to be able to do her rituals. And we make a hole in the earth and we put blood in, and we sprinkle rose petals on, and we, you know, do a prayer, and we love ourselves. And it's just something I never received. But I also don't think I could have ever imagined my mum or seeing a woman do that. Like, if you were to ask me, you know, 10 years ago, what awesome things can women do with their menstrual blood? I'd be like, what do you mean awesome things? What kind of awesome things can you possibly do? It wouldn't have come up. But now it's just a whole new relating and learning to relate and creating a ritual that honors the self. Because like I was saying in the, well, after the first yesterday night's meeting, it's in doing the quiet work. It's creating the world we're wanting. We can talk about the world that we want. I want this change. I want that change. But when we start doing it, that act is quiet. Nobody knows. None of my neighbors know that's what I'm doing. I'm doing the world that I'm asking for. I'm doing the world that I'm imagining. And it's in the quiet. And I really get inspired by Gandhi, who came in during a channeling one night. And he said, to change the world, you don't have to be loud to change the world. It's in the quiet, and consistency is more powerful than intensity. Just doing it. We can talk about it, but let's just learn what doing it feels like and unfurling that, and then having that be the next natural thing that our daughters and our sons see.
Yeah, I love that. Just normalizing, you know, our blood and our rituals for our kids to be able to celebrate that. The same with me. I always call it my magic blood, and my kids are always intrigued when I'm in my I call it in my flowers. That's what we call it in Ireland. But yeah, it's really beautiful. And on a tangible level, you know, when you learned all of this, how to work with your cycle, like you're a business owner, you're a mother of three, you know, you're a busy woman, but also you how do you lead differently then when you are connected to your cycle, when you are in tune with your body, when you are doing these rituals every day? How does that, you know, when we think about leadership, how does that impact your leadership or help your leadership?
Well, I can honor other people. No.
Yeah.
Bye.
I feel like I can honor other people better. I can honor other people with where they're at, because I'm so different in every single phase of my cycle. I'm a different person all the time. I guess I probably used to be quite harsh when people weren't like behaving certain ways that I would want them to consistently behave. But it just brings about more compassion for myself. Like whatever I can do for myself, I can do for other people, because I've got that relatableness. Like I'm not ignoring myself, so then I'm not ignoring other people for where they're at. And I kind of lost the rest of your question because Andy came in and distracted me. I totally forgot. I'm so sorry.
I really want to say, Ice, that our basically our menstrual cycle is like the highest form of witchcraft there is, and to be so in tune and doing these rituals with your blood is like you're a very powerful witch.
Yeah, for sure. I remember the first time I did a womb awakening course years ago and connected to my blood. As you said, you know, it was like, what the fuck? You can't do that with your blood, you know. It seemed so random and alien to me, but it was so intriguing too, you know. Some people drink their blood. We put face masks with their blood. There's so much plasma and stem cells in it. It's really great for you. Make art with it. You know, it's a really fascinating thing, and I do recommend anybody who is, you know, watching this, who hasn't explored their moon blood and what they can do with it, give it a shot, look into it, start getting intrigued by it, because it definitely does change the game. And living in tune with our cycles, with the seasons of who we are as cyclical beings, it changes the game, especially on a business and leadership level, because there's certain times of the month where we're firing at all cylinders. There's certain times of the month where we need to retreat and slow down and listen and connect to our intuition and receive the downloads. Like, as you know, they say, if you need to make a big decision, then bleed on it, you know. And yeah, there's just certain different seasons and cycles of our moon, of our bodies, that we get to tap into and use as our superpowers, and they don't teach us that at school. So it's really, really incredible and important stuff.
I have a poem for that.
You have a poem for that. She has a poem for everything. I love it. I love it. So tell me, Michelle, we might move over to you, my love. I know that you are in the business of, you know, helping women free their voices, you know, collaborate very much in that feminine leadership space where you are, you know, dismantling hierarchy and calling in community. And it's a very beautiful mission and vision that you have. And I'd love to hear about, you know, what you believe, how you believe the witch wound plays out in our psyche, in our bodies, in our leadership, and you know what you do, what the antidote to that is for you.
Yeah, thanks, Saoirse. Yeah, I was just really loving reveling in both Hannah and Ice, and what you both have to say, because I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, where do I go? And you know, I've got so many things I want to say. But I think the first thing that I want to say is that, you know, for a long time I was like, witch. Like, I'm not walking around banging the drum. Like, how do I resonate with that term? And it was actually, I think, various women over time, probably over the last 5 years, that have seen that in me and have said that to me. And I was like, yeah, I'm not vibing with it. So I think part of it has been finding my own sense of identity and authenticity within that. And it's probably only been maybe the last few months where I've kind of felt a lot more comfortable in that. And ironically, landing in the UK, I'm like, yeah, of course I am. So I think that's a piece of it. That there's an interesting piece in that as well, that, you know, being a witch can look however you want it to be. You can be walking around being a normal, like, you know, doing your normal dues, and still and identify as being a witch, and community within that, and still be a million other things as well at the same time. And it's almost like a thread or an essence that flows through everything that you do. The other thing as well is our biggest challenge in our lives will often become our work. So it'll be the thing that we're healing and reintegrating over and over and over again. It's not like you heal it once and you integrate it once and it's done. It'll come up when there's another up level, or when there's another shift or another change. The same stuff will come up on a different level, to be remade sense of in a different way. So when I started on this path, it largely started in my mid-30s, when I was questioning, you know, what does it mean to be a woman in this world where you've outgrown all your female role models? And at the same time, like, my work background, my professional background is largely, I'm a social worker by background, so it's all been around telling story and helping young people share their story and to advocate for change. So this path has felt quite organic to step into, but also there was this big undercurrent of, who in the fuck am I to start talking about women's leadership? And every time I go through a shift or a change, it's that same undercurrent of, who the fuck am I to do this? Who the fuck am I to do that? And then it's a working through that. But in the working through that, you then create the space to be able to hold that for other women as well, who are going to be most probably going through the same thing in their own way. And so part of my master's stuff that I'm really interested in is how we're always the person healing, the healer, and the leader. Like, we're all three at any one point in time. And I think any human on the planet is all three in different ways and in different points along that journey. But yeah, I think I'm also really interested in that. I know we were talking about the birth, death, and rebirth as well. That I'm super, super passionate about, and the rites of passage that comes around that, and how we're constantly going through birth, death, rebirth. I think sometimes I go through birth, death, and rebirth in an hour.
Yeah.
I come out the other side, I'm like, hang on, I'm not the person I was an hour ago. Who am I now? And then taking space for that as well. And another bit that I've been really interested in as well is the importance of solidarity and having other people that are on the same path when you come through the rebirth. The rebirth is only successful when we're surrounded by people who speak a similar language. Because without that, we don't have that support network and that tie to help us successfully birth into the new world. There's a risk that we could potentially get lost in that process or find the way through that process a lot more tricky. So I find that really fascinating and really interesting, that it only becomes successful because of other humans. Really powerful, really, really powerful. And the joining of hands. And I think for all of us, and probably everyone listening as well, our work is successful because we have other people to join hands with that speak like we do and resonate and understand and get it. The other thing, I want to speak to what Ice was saying, because I really, really resonate. I feel like this has been a big part of my journey over the last few months as well, is that a voice is not always loud. A voice is resonant in every single thing that we do. So often, the biggest voice in a room can be the quietest person on the surface, because they're sitting and they're watching and they're taking everything in. And, it's not always, standing at Parliament House or whatever with a big sign. Like, sometimes it is, but that's not the way that everyone wants to create change and impact in this world, or the way that everyone resonates. I know that that doesn't feel resonant for me, and it doesn't feel good for me. But to go and create some ridiculously huge vision and to throw everything at it and run for it and just go, how do I do this? That resonates. But then, having said that as well, part of my personal journey has been, rather than it being having a big voice, it has been, how do I have a moderated voice that feels sustainable and feels really, really great for me? So it might be, picking up an avocado and going, hang on, where did this avocado come from? Like, who farmed it? Where are its remains going to go? How am I going to utilize it? What in it is good for me? How much avocado is good for you? I have no idea to the answer to the last question, but anyway. But every single act that we carry out has an impact, right? So we get to choose, and I think we can't disconnect choice and voice. They're both, opposite sides of the same coin. They're both exactly the same thing. So every time we make a choice, we're actually having a voice as well. And I think there's big responsibility around all of it. And I don't think we can separate the notion of responsibility either. It's all deeply interconnected. I was talking about that on the having children, not having children call that I did the other day. We make a choice in life, and then what for? What's the purpose of that? So having a voice is both being out in the world and being vocal about something, but it's also about being inward just as much. Like, there's that contrast between the two sides that are both super, super powerful and super important. You can't have a strong voice around something without turning inward as well and asking yourself some big, big, big questions, because the responsibility that we're asking of others also is the responsibility we're asking of ourselves as well. I don't know. What else do I want to say?
I think that's a huge piece, like there is a huge amount of inner standing that we need to do in order to be able to be a voice. But, and that's an interesting topic right now. There's a lot of talk in the world where people won't say anything because they don't understand a complex issue, or they don't want to get involved in things that they're not educated enough on. But I think there's also a line where you know what's right, and we need to be able to to feel confident enough and safe enough to stand up for what we know is right, deep in our bones, in our wounds, in our lives, in the world, and what we want to see, you know. And I think there's parts of, you know, the last year, especially for me, I obviously have got very strong views about certain things in the world, especially when it comes to genocides and stuff like that. But at times, you know, you want to be a voice. You want to be a voice for the voiceless, especially when you've done all this work and you really understand the significance and importance of solidarity, of standing up for what is right, and using your voice for good. But then there's sometimes when, like, you're not in a position, you don't feel like you have capacity to, and you're in your own death and rebirth cycle, where you're in a wobbly moment where you're not feeling like you can be leading from the front. And that's what's so beautiful about this work, that we are all in, leaning on each other, because sometimes it is a time to lead, and sometimes it's a time to let others lead, and for you to fall into the beautiful web that you have weaved of community, of sisters holding each other, you know, holding each other's hand, being a stand for one another. And when it's not your time to shine, when you want to be like a big pile of gloop on the ground because you're still in that transition from caterpillar to butterfly, that it's okay to be there, that it's okay to say, you know, to not have a voice right now and to let other people use theirs. And I love that, you know, that's what the feminine leadership space is all about. And that is what the world is hungry for now. Well, women definitely are, you know, we don't need to be shouting from the rooftops all of the time about everything either. It's about coming home and really understanding yourself and your values, and then using your voice when you feel strong, when you have capacity to, when you're rooted, you know, and not just shouting just to be heard, which is so important too. And yeah, I think that's an important piece, you know, where we're disrupting these systems and healing these witch wounds is by, you know, being together and leaning on each other, and really feeling like there is a web of interconnectivity there holding us all when we need it, because that's the kind of world that we want to be creating right now, you know. And we need to be weaving a reality for ourselves by doing that. And that's why I'm so proud of us in this Rebel Ma, you know, movement, because we are, you know, disrupting by being, just by being that. And it's not super confusing. You don't have to have it all worked out either. It's just like, you know, be intuitive, be devoted to your calling, even when it's hard, you know, stay focused, even when it's fucking noisy, you know, lean on each other, listen to your body, be in tune with your cycle and attuned to your, you know, the cycles of the earth, and just really, you know, be in your heart and fucking lead from that place, because that's what, you know, that's what the world needs more of right now, heart-centered leaders rising. And, you know, it's a beautiful thing that we're all doing here. So yeah. And what else were you wanted, you had something else, I think, Michelle, you said there's something else you wanted to say.
There was something when you were talking, I was like, you know, when you're talking about noise, like there is so much noise. Like you can figure out, like you can just go on the internet and like get 500 gazillion bits of information about anything under the sun. And it's like when we're talking about like our gifts and our message and our wisdom, it's like, you know, this woman's most passionate about Palestine. That woman's most passionate about disability. That woman's most passionate about Aboriginal land rights. It's like we can all be talking about all the things at once, but then it's almost like it's like this big cloud full of just ideas then. And it's like, what are you most passionate about? Like you get your thing that you're most passionate about and you laser focus and you absolutely go for gold for that thing, and then get a whole bunch of women together who are all got their thing and support and back each other on their thing, and then we can individually and collectively actually create some change. Mm-hmm. So whatever that thing is, who cares what that thing is? Who cares what anyone else thinks about what that thing is? Just pick your thing and absolutely go for it, and then find women that will back the crap out of you in it.
Yeah, and that's the easy part. You know what I mean? That makes it so easy, because sometimes we can get so carried away with the big picture and having to do it all and having to be a leader. And it's like, no, just find something that lights you up from the inside, that really fucking sparks that passion in you that you can speak about with your eyes closed, and like you don't need to be an expert. You just know that it lights you up, you know what I mean? And do that. And do that. And as you say, yeah, find other women to do that too. Like that's how we birthed these books and these movements. It's because we were passionate about something, and our passion magnetized others towards us, other people with that vision, other people with in integrity with their values too. And the more that we stand up and speak our truth and shine our light, the more those people who are aligned with us are going to find us. And that's what makes life magic, is to be able to lean on our sisters and create beautiful connections with people and feel like we're actually contributing to something that is bigger than us, you know, that is giving us, I guess, meaning and depth and intimacy with others in our lives. Yeah. Anna, what do you say about that? Have you got a poem for it?
Because we touched so much on the blood, I was like, yeah, I am gonna share another poem. It's called the bleeding goddess. And just I'll resonate with so much everything all of you said, and thank you, Michelle. It's amazing to hear you, and I feel like there's so much in that. If everyone, like you say, picks their passion, picks their thing, and doesn't judge it what anyone else is doing, and it doesn't mean they don't care for the other things, but you know, if everyone, I feel like has got a thing to follow, a passion, and if we all did that, how we can create such a huge positive change in our world. And yeah, the witch one's an interesting one. Even the word, I actually get the women to say it and feel it in their mouth. It carries so much. I mean, I've had guests be freaked out and like come to me once and be like, are you gonna like turn me into a toad? Like, was so terrified of like, this word, and like what's happened because of this word, and how they've made the beautiful witch be this scary, archetype character that lives in the wood that puts children in ovens. Like, that's also been. So we're reclaiming the word witch and the witch, and we're reclaiming all our rights, like our blood rights, our birth rights, our death rights. So the bleeding goddess came through. Interestingly, Ice, from a situation like when you mentioned about the blood being found in the bin, this whole poem came through because of a similar. I was at a friend's house and I was bleeding and I covered my blood in the bin, and then something stopped me and it was like, why do you feel like you need to cover your blood right now? And then this came through, so I'm gonna share the bleeding goddess. Covering up the blood that came out of me was a periodical travesty to make out that she's make-believe, hidden, dirty, disgusting, like some kind of disease, when she is life and death, Mother Nature's breath, and all that's left, the unspoken theft of a woman's knowing, journeying from maiden to her croning, owning finally her power, the years her blood was devalued by the patriarchal tower. Plug her up and push her down to stamp on, misguided masculine energy acting as a toxic tampon. I'll never cover my blood for you. She's sacred, all-knowing, and that's what scared you too. I'll let her run down my legs that stand above all that's untrue. And I'm running, bleeding, angry and hot, for every womb that has ever forgot its magic. They made you believe to bleed was tragic, and to feel shame, but nothing but your blood to blame, to not know how to transmute the pain, or to rest, and to listen. Holy shit, was that a premonition? I'm sorry. What? My blood? Yes, holds clear vision. Stop. Bleed on it. Don't make a decision. Because I'm bleeding in agony for every woman that had ever had to forsake their bleed. And it is a great and timely death. It's the death of the women, of the witches, believing that they were ever anything less.
So beautiful. I love it. I love it. I love it. Oh God. And yeah, let's just maybe, finish off in the Rebel Mad book, I know we say a prayer that, you know, one of my teachers, Sarah Richardson, says a prayer to the witches who have been burned, you know, and maybe we will finish off by saying that little prayer for those women, because at the end of the day, you know, so many were treated so unfairly, and so many still today are being burned alive and being raped and being murdered. There's genocides happening all over the world. You know, when we speak our truth, we are liberating those who have not got a voice. When we share our magic, we are liberating those in our lineage who could not use their gifts. But, you know, there are women right now in this world. It's all good to have ancestral reverence, and yet there's people in the world right now who can't feel safe. And that's why it is important to find the confidence and the safety within, to use our voices in this world, in this privileged world that we live in, to be a voice for others, you know, not stay silent, because it does contribute to the violence, and we all have a part to play in freeing ourselves and freeing others, you know. So let's just maybe close down our eyes and really connect into this moment and say a prayer for all of those women who are suffering and whose hearts and homes and lives and lands are being stolen right now. And let's send a beautiful prayer out to them, and may they all be protected. May they all be safe. May they all be happy. May they all be freed and liberated from the shackles of colonization that is, you know, oppressing them from the hands of their oppressors. And may we just say a little prayer for those in our lineage, you know, who I guess have suffered and were treated unfairly, were disempowered and murdered for practicing their gifts and their crafts, honoring and remembering the midwives, the healers, the teachers, the priestesses, the herbalists, the birth workers, the leaders, the shamans, the wizards, the wise women, the way showers, who were all prosecuted over time. And just sending our love back to them through the timelines, letting them know that we remember them, that we are the granddaughters of the witches that they couldn't burn, and the spirits of the witches that they did. Thank them for their bravery, and thank them for choosing to incarnate in this time, to show us the way, to give us the confidence to be able to use our voice and have a say. And let us ask them to bless us with their strength, with their courage and wisdom. Let them guide us as we reclaim our power, our sovereignty, and our gifts. Let us never forget or take for granted herstory, not history, herstory. And we are all here reclaiming that, rewriting that, you know, rewriting our stories where necessary, and making sure that herstory is put back on the map and the feminine is remembered. Let us remember and reclaim all lost soul pieces, you know, from these persecutions. Let us reintegrate all past lifetimes we may have experienced where we were persecuted for our gifts of healing, of sexuality, or anything otherwise. Let us bring unconscious to the conscious to heal and transmute the shame, the fear, and the separation. It ends with us. Let us be free. Let all beings be happy, safe, protected, and free. And so it is. Taking a deep breath in. And just releasing. And just honoring. And just celebrating yourself for showing up today, and celebrating every woman who is, you know, really finding her voice and using her gifts in service to raising the vibration in these times that we're living in, because it is really, really important. And yeah, I'm really honoring you all for the work that you do, for the women that you are, for the healing that you continuously lean into, for the deaths and the births and the rebirths over and over and over again. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Thank you for shining your light bright for all to see. And thank you for loving me and trusting me.
With our life. Thank you. Thank you for making this happen. Thank you for being the witchiest witch, for making this happen.
Which is
Queen witch.
Beautiful. Thank you for watching, guys.
Thanks, everyone.